Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I'm Dashen, Usman. The top stories at this hour. Supreme Court declares it's unconstitutional for governors to hold LG funds. President Tinubu seeks way out of new minimum wage issue, invites labor leaders for talks. Mali junta lifts ban on political activities suspended in April. Details of these stories and more in a moment. Let's begin by telling you that the Supreme Court has declared that it is unconstitutional for state governors to hold onto funds meant for local government administrations. In its lead judgment, read by Justice Emmanuel Agim, the Apex Court observed that the refusal of the state government on financial autonomy for local governments has gone on for over 2 decades. He said local governments have since stopped receiving the money meant for them from the state governors who act in their stead. Justice Agim noted that the 774 local government councils in the country should manage their funds themselves. He dismissed the preliminary objections of the defendants and state governors. Now, the Apex Court consequently directed that local government allocation from the federal or federation account should be paid directly to them. Now, as of press time, this particular story or the ruling is still ongoing, and we have our correspondent on the ground who will be bringing us updates of the proceeding as the news continues. Also joining us to discuss more on this is a legal practitioner, Festus Ogun. Hello, Festus. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Festus, how does this ruling align with previous judicial decisions or constitutional interpretations, especially regarding the autonomy of local governments in Nigeria?
I would say without any fear of contradiction that this very judgment is a landmark decision that all Democrats and all progressives in Nigeria should celebrate. This is because the autonomy of local governments in Nigeria has been in siege for the past 2 decades, principally because he that bears the piper dictates the tune. In the recent past, we've seen how the state governments in Nigeria have been the one essentially dictating the financial state of the local government, despite the fact that these funds are being paid directly to the joint accounts operated by the state and local government. But we've seen that the local governments are not benefiting from the monies, allocated by the federal government through the state government. So what the Supreme Court has said essentially is that now the state government can no longer sit upon the funds that are meant for the local government. And this has been the advocacy we've been doing over the years, that for us to have a progressive country, we must give room for fiscal federalism. And fiscal federalism begins essentially when state government begins to get the allocation that the federal government has, sent to them.
All right, speaking of fiscal federalism, Festus, now what will happen to the LCDAs across the country when the Constitution recognizes only 774 local government areas where the funds are expected to go to? That's directly to, for example, in Lagos, the funds will be paid directly to 20 local government areas recognized by the Constitution. So what will be the fate of the other 37 LCDAs?
Local government development areas, LCDAs, are not known by the Constitution. What is known by the Constitution and what is created by the Constitution are local government areas. The numbers of local government areas created by the Constitution are 774. So the money that are to be allocated will be allocated directly to the local government areas that are created by the Constitution. Since the local government development area, the LCDAs, are created by the states. So the implication is that they are going to be funded by the states because the money sent directly from the federal government of Nigeria to the local government areas created by the Constitution, the 774 local government created by the Constitution, are to be expended by the said local government. If the local government now goes ahead to allocate this money to the LCDAs, then it will be an abuse. But interestingly, these local government development areas, what we call local government development areas, are geographically and constitutionally subsumed under the local government areas. So one way or the other, the management of the affairs, of the local affairs of the LCDA will be subsumed under a particular local government. And when the resources from the federal government of Nigeria comes to this state, to this very local government, then the money allocated can cater for the LCDAs. Because looking at it, so most of these LCDAs are carved out or created out of the existing local government areas created by the Constitution. So looking at it here or there, the allocated resources would still cater impliedly for the local government development areas, one way or the other.
All right, now, Festus, now the sad thing is that, despite the Supreme Court declaring it unconstitutional for state governors to hold on to these funds, some state governors, would still feel entitled to these funds, even after whatever ruling that comes out, in a bit. But what are the practical steps that state governments and local governments need to take to comply with the directive that local government allocations should be paid directly from the Federation account?
As far as the case before the Supreme Court is concerned, if the money allocated to the local government is tampered with by the state government, it constitutes a gross misconduct that could be a basis for the impeachment of an elected governor or deputy governor. It's a gross misconduct that could warrant the impeachment of the governor or deputy governor. So what I think should be done is for us, or is for the local government to be ready for what is to come. And that is not all. Again, the state government must brace up to accept this reality by putting in place the conduct of a free, fair, and credible election. Because part of the decision of the Supreme Court is that where the state government refuses or neglects to conduct a local government election, where democratically elected local government executive and councillors will be in place, then they will not be entitled to the allocations coming from the state government. So we need, from the federal government. So what we need right now is a free, fair, and credible elections conducted by state government to put in place democratically elected local government executives. That is one. Again, I also feel strongly that state government should create anti-corruption agencies, because looking at the fact that we have 774 local government, the ICPC and the EFCC may not be able to adequately look at issues of corruption and malfeasance in this local government. So I feel that as recognized by the Constitution, there should be state anti-corruption agencies.
All right, now, Festus, just before we let you go, do you think that there are any legal mechanisms that the state governors can use to challenge or even resist the implementation of the Supreme Court's directive?
The Supreme Court has spoken. The governors are left with no other option than to accept the decision of the Supreme Court. It cannot be appealed against. Yes, they can apply for a review, but as it stands, the decision of the Supreme Court has to be obeyed with immediate effect. Any other action that is contrary to the clear decision of the Apex Court will not only be contemptuous, it will equally constitute a gross misconduct that will be a ground for the impeachment of the governors. Let me say this before we conclude, that as a country practicing a constitutional democracy, we cannot afford to disrespect the clear ruling of the Apex Court. Anything outside respecting the court orders, especially from the apex court, which is not just a court of law, but also a court of policy, would, throw our country into a banana republic. The governors are left with no option than to obey the decision of the Supreme Court, not just in the interest of the state, but equally in the interest of the local government. Fiscal federalism is what we've been advocating for. In the absence of fiscal federalism, the essence of federalism, in fact, the essence of our democracy is completely defeated. So I feel that it's a great decision. It's a landmark decision. We must commend the government, the federal government of Nigeria. We must commend the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation. And as a people, we must be ready for the breath of fresh air that we've received as a people. And we must keep our eyes very open, vigilantly, on the local government executive when the funds start rolling indirectly.
All right, well, thank you so much, Festus, for taking time out to speak to us on this.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Still on judicial matters, the Community Court of Justice, ECOWAS, has ruled that the Federal Republic of Nigeria violated the human rights of Obianuju Udeh and 2 others. The court found Nigeria in breach of Articles 1, 4, 6, 9, 10, and 11 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, specifically on the right to life, security of person, freedom of expression, assembly and association, prohibition of torture, and duty of the state to investigate, and also the right to effective remedy. The applicants, Obianuju Udeh, Perpetual Kamsi, and Dabiraoluwa Adeyinka, allege that these violations occurred during the peaceful protests at the Lekki Toll Gate in Lagos State on October 20th and 21st, 2020. The presiding judge, Justice Koroma Sengu, who delivered the judgment, dismissed the allegation that the right to life is guaranteed under Article 4 of the ACPHR is violated. He, however, said that the federal government must pay each applicant 2 million naira as compensation for their violations of their security of person, prohibition of torture and cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment, rights to freedom of expression, assembly and association, duty to investigate human rights violations, and rights to effective remedy. Earlier, we were joined by legal practitioner Henry Ekine.
The consideration that particularly the NSAS protest, which has appeared to suffer real legal and constitutional consideration in Nigeria, has been given some sort of legal interpretation for the protection of the rights of those protesters that were violated. Secondly, it's very significant to also send a signal to the Nigerian state that the issue of the protection of rights of citizens and the fundamental duty of states to protect the rights of citizens on all the international human rights instruments that we have ratified is something we cannot undermine. And again, it also expands, and that's very interesting for me when I read the considerations of the court. It also expands the spectrum of the fundamental rights that are valuable for citizens beyond the provisions under Chapter 4 of our Constitution, to the extent that you could even talk about the right to investigate or the duty of state to investigate alleged violation of rights. And when the Nigerian state fails to do so, then the courts, the Community Court of Justice, can come clear to insist that the Nigerian state, as a state party, to the protocol.
The news resumes after this break. Stay with us. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. President Bola Tinubu has called for a review of all planned procurement of all ministries, departments and agencies, especially some major projects of the Ministry of Works, all in a bid to ensure better budget implementation. This was part of the resolution reached at the Federal Executive Council meeting, which took place at the State House in Abuja on Wednesday. FEC also sought an amendment of the legislation on the National Council on Procurement to make it more robust. Information Minister Mohammed Idris revealed this while briefing journalists after the FEC meeting. He said most of the road projects were inherited from successive administrations and were not part of the newly approved roads such as the Lagos-Calabar Highway. The federal government is nearing an agreement on a new national minimum wage as President Bola Tinubu has invited the organized labor, including the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, to a meeting at the Aso Villa today. The president is expected to make a decision on the 62,000 naira proposal from the government and private sector, as well as the 250,000 naira demand from the organized labor. This meeting comes about a month after President Tinubu announced in his Democracy Day speech on June 12, 2024, that an executive bill on the new national minimum wage for workers will soon be sent to the National Assembly for passage. Joining us to discuss this is public affairs commentator Dr. Jide Johnson. Hello, Jide. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Good day to our viewers all over the world. Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, the new minimum wage saga seems to have dragged on for too long. Should we be expecting a resolution at the end of today, as the organized labor will be meeting with the president on the matter?
I think that we'll be getting a final solution to the problem because the ultimate decision maker when it comes to Federal Republic of Nigeria is the president. And the decision maker on the part of the labor leader. So I think that at the end of the day, we should be able to find a resolution between the 62,000 proposal of the federal government and the 250,000 demands of the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress. So I think at the end of today, we should be able to find a resolution to that particular problem.
Okay. We do hope the same. Now, but figures have actually been thrown around from different quarters as to what the minimum wage should be. And as you already know, some states even pay, more than what the government is saying that they would pay. That's 62,000 naira. However, there's a very, very wide gap in the figures presented by all parties involved, with the labor insisting or still insisting on 250,000 naira. Now, at this point, what amount would you consider fair for Nigerian workers, considering the present economic realities?
I think the range of 120,000 to 150,000 will be fair as minimum wage because, you have to graduate up to from level 1, whatever level.
But that was the amount you actually suggested a few weeks ago. Now, let's not forget that inflation has increased as well.
Well, when all the policy put in place by the government begins to take its shape, I'm sure that the price of food will drop. Just this week, the federal government removed duties on ban on importation of food and what have you. I think that when we put all of that in place, I'm sure the inflation will reduce to a certain extent. But if you are looking at the ability of government to pay and for it not to contribute to the double-digit inflation that we have, I think 120,000 to 150,000 will be fair as minimum wage for an average worker in Nigeria. Don't forget, this is not even peculiar to those working in government. You're also talking about those that are working in organized private sector. You're also talking about small and medium-scale enterprises who have to scale their own wages according to whatever is passed by the National Assembly as the minimum wage in Nigeria. So if you are looking at it holistically from the ability to pay on the part of the government and other employers of labor in the country and what will be a basic living wage for an average Nigerian, I think 120,000 to 150,000 will be appropriate at this particular point in time, taking into consideration that there are other steps that are being taken by government to address the double-digit inflation that we have in the country.
All right. So, but in your professional opinion, and if you were to advise the labor, do you think that they should accept if the federal government proposes any figure lower than 100,000 naira?
I don't think the labor should. Anything less than 100,000. You see, we break it down. Now, by the 1988 national policy on population, it's a family of 6, 4 children, and the 2 parents. So if you break 100,000 naira down by family of 6 over a period of 30 days, what does it amount to? So it's important for us to break it down. Until you break down a problem, you don't get solution to it. So anything less than 100,000 is just paying lip service to minimum wage in Nigeria. Even 100,000 might not even be sufficient enough as a living wage for an average person in Nigeria. What will cover 100,000 will just be a surviving wage.
All right, so now, Jide, do you think the governors would follow through on this if implemented, as they've actually said that they cannot afford to pay even 60,000 naira? And
that brings to bear the issue of the voters, the citizen, in terms of what should be their own role in electing who will represent their best interest. If governors are saying they can't afford to pay it, we should be electing governors that can think out of the box, not governors that will be waiting for federal allocation to solve the problem of their state. We should be electing people that are coming to tap the untapped potential of the states and make revenue for their states. Now, we have been electing, quote unquote, let me put it in this way, quote unquote, lazy people who relies on federal allocation at the end of the month to make whatever projects, expenses they want to use to run the state. Nigeria has a lot of potential. Do we have people with the right set of advisors to tap into the untapped potentials of this country, to generate revenue, to ensure that Nigerians are paid the living wage they are paid? When it comes to the governor funding their lifestyle, when it comes to buying exotic cars to use as utility vehicles, when it comes to funding their pet projects, they will have the resources to do that. But when it comes to giving the average citizen deliverables of democracy, they are not asking for too much. If you convert 100,000 naira to dollar, what does it equate to? It does not even equate to what should be the Human Development Index and in terms of the living wage that an average person should collect in a day globally. So if you look at the global index, I'm not sure we're asking too much in Nigeria. The governor needs to think outside of the box. They need to think beyond the jack that comes at the end of the month. They need to tap into the potentials of their state in driving home their own internally generated revenue in order to meet up with the needs and the demands of their states.
All right, well, thank you so much, Dr. Jide Johnson, for speaking to us on this.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
As Nigeria's population grows, an itchy concern that grows with its population is the hike in food prices. The cost of food items has caused a public outcry and reactions from economic experts. Let's take a look at this report.
Last price. Now so I buy a course from a 12. New one to a course past this audience. I'm telling you, sir. New year you course past this audience. Why? For the whole Nigeria now, all Kogiam now come out. So make a look at the kind of go anywhere. You're too small, so that's too cost even New Year.
The endless circle of what to eat daily is every man's worry, a problem sometimes associated with indecisiveness. But for most Nigerians, it is a lack of money to purchase.
You can't even plan, to be honest. You can't, before we could make lists, say, okay, for example, onions 200, tomato 300. Now you cannot do that because, yes, this price is not today's price. You can't make budgets for anything. You just buy as you see, because at the end of the day, you won't eat the money. You have to buy the food.
Once or twice every month, the price of foodstuff increases. This frequent hike in food prices has affected the daily lives of ordinary Nigerians.
This one is sweet. Then they sell 3,000. Watermelon, at the selling 4,000 because you don't go high too much. I go buy 100 pieces, 300,000 naira. This one is cabbage. This cabbage at the selling, I go buy bagging 50,000 naira. That Irish, 250, 250,000 for one bag for Irish potato. So everything now never come down a day off.
With several changes in economic conditions and inadequate government policies to combat the current cost of living, economists say that inflation is eating up the nation's roots.
Inflation in Nigeria, as I speak with you, is 33.94%, approximately 34%. The actual objective on inflation is 6 to 9%. Unfortunately, Nigeria has not been able to meet targets perhaps this would have led to hunger, deprivation, poverty in the land. Exchange rate in Nigeria, as I speak with you, it's very volatile. The goal of exchange rate is stability, but what we have in Nigeria is volatility. From 400, 700 that it was last year, right now is 13 naira less than 1,500. It has gone to 1.9 within the last 1 year, gone back to 1.1, and it's oscillating. Nobody is sure as to what the exchange rate will be.
The outcry from Nigerians is a call to action for the government to take immediate measures to tackle the country's issues and ensure food security for all Nigerians. In Lagos for News Central, Chidima Ona.
To political matters now, the governor of Rivers State, South Nigeria, Siminalayi Fubara, has said that his administration has started the process of preparing the 2025 budget, just as he insisted that the legislative seats of Martin Amewule and his co-travelers that were declared vacant on December 13, 2023 will remain so. The governor stated that they are truly gone and will eventually return home because they desired it to be so when they defected from the People's Democratic Party, the platform on which they won the election, to the All Progressives Congress voluntarily. Governor Fubara spoke when he received a solidarity visit, the leadership structure, critical stakeholders, opinion leaders, women and youths of Eche and Omuma local government areas led by Ogbako Eche, the apex socio-cultural organization of Eche ethnic nationality worldwide at Government House in Port Harcourt.
I want you to live here, be encouraged more, continue to do the best you can to promote sports in our state. The only thing that brings people together is sports. And I think and believe that if we spend and invest in sports, it will go a long way to engage our youth and to reduce crime and criminality. So I'm here authorizing that the commissioner should immediately commence a sports program or festival that can engage our youth within this period. Be it football, be it whatever, but I want you to come up with a tournament that will engage our youth within now and December. I want the program to be a program that by December we should be gathering for us to honor the winners of the tournament.
The National Working Committee of the People's Democratic Party, during its 588th meeting on Wednesday, July 10, 2024, reviewed various issues, including complaints regarding the actions of the National Vice Chairman, South, Chief Dan Obby, related to the upcoming September 21, 2024 governorship election in Edo State. The NWC unanimously condemned the actions and statements of Chief Dan Obby concerning the Edo State governorship primary election. The committee stated that his conduct was inconsistent with the provisions of the PDP constitution as amended in 2017 and his responsibilities as a national officer of the party. As a result, the NWC has established a 6-member committee headed by Deputy National Chairman South, Ambassador Taufik Arakbaja, to investigate the matter following the party's constitution. Pending the conclusion of the investigation, Chief Dan Obby has been suspended from participating in all NWC meetings, activities, and programs. Congress in Edo State has accused the state government of misappropriation of funds and monumental corruption. The acting chairman of the party in the state, while also accusing the state government of finalizing plans to hand over state-owned property to private cronies and companies, say that the state APC has documented proof of the wide-scale corruption perpetrated in the state in the last 8 years and loans taken which cannot be accounted for.
On the high-level corruption and mismanagement of Edo State resources by the incumbent governor, Godwin Obaseki, despite the trillions that have come into Edo State cover through FAAC, IGR, 13% derivation for oil-producing areas, grant, etc. in the last 8 years, Edo State is still one of the most indebted states with over 600 billion. Obaseki is processing a fresh 7 million at a time other states are running from foreign-denominated loans. Obaseki told the World Bank that he intends to use the loan to upgrade primary health care centers in wards and local government areas.
The need for stakeholders to join hands together in a move to improve sustainable peace in any given society has been described as a move in the right direction. This was the consensus at a 2-day workshop for state actors on policy dialogue series on the security dynamics, solutions and civil-military relationship in Plateau State. The training sought to initiate possible ways of fostering measures aimed at improving relationships between security personnel and communication where they inhabit in the course of maintaining orderliness. News Central's Chizoba Anyonwe was there and now completes the report.
Team Foundation is a non-governmental organization. They put together this training to brainstorm on issues of conflict resolution, causative agents, and ways of stemming them. These were major issues discussed by these stakeholders gathered under this roof from different spheres of life. Topping the 2-day training were solutions for the way forward, while identifying major factors that threaten national security, democratic accountability of human rights, and periodic elections, among others.
Still like Plateau need this kind of relationship because from time to time we have incidents of attacks in community. From time to time, we have incidents of uniformed person going to raid a place because they think they are suspect. And so all of these need to come with enhanced relationship to avoid picking the wrong persons, to avoid killing wrong persons, to avoid injuring people that ordinarily shouldn't be injured.
Bringing both parties together through dialogue and discuss areas where there are disparities and where there are gaps, and understand the doctrines and the culture, and find a way to work together as a harmonious approach to stability.
If this exercise was useful, then stakeholders who served as participants here would ensure they take home necessary tools for the betterment of society.
We need to be open with one another, and first, the humanity in us should supersede any other thing. We should look at ourselves as human before we think of being either a Yoruba or a Hausa man or an Igbo man. Once we look at the humanity in us, we are going to work hand in hand and things will move peacefully for us in Nigeria.
We look forward for more collaboration and for more programs like this, because we are open to learning. As long as you have to keep learning, and what they always come up with, like this research, the result of this research has really shown that they are doing a fantastic job. And by God's grace, as we go back to our various organizations, we are going to implement that, and we will have better working relationships and we'll be able to do our job better.
These underscore the essence and the need for civil-military relationship if sustainable peace will be achieved, especially on the plateau. In Jos for News Central, Chizoba Anyonwe.
Coming up after the break. Mali junta lifts political activities suspended in April. We'll tell you why after the break. The news continues in West Africa, where Mali's junta has announced that it was reauthorizing activities of political parties and political associations which it had suspended in April. The head of military government, Colonel Assimi Goita, had justified the suspension by citing the political parties sterile discussions and subversion, which he said posed a danger to an ongoing national dialogue on the political future of Mali. The parties at the time were protesting the colonel's decision to stay in power beyond a March 2024 deadline for returning to civilian rule and boycotted the dialogue. At the dialogue, it was recommended that the military remain in power for 2 to 5 additional years and that the current head of the junta be allowed to run in any future presidential elections. Let's head to South Africa, where in Western Cape, the Education Department has ordered dozens of schools across the city and other parts of the province to close because of severe weather warnings. Several areas of Cape Town were flooded on Thursday after heavy winter rains and gale force winds battered the city, ripping off roofs from homes and damaging thousands of makeshift dwellings. The city's Disaster Operations Center said informal settlements around the city, including the major township of Kayelisha, had been particularly affected by the flooding. Several roads, including major highways, were flooded, and there were concerns about rising water levels at dams.
And there was like this lull in the air, almost like the calm before the storm. It went really quiet, and then all of a sudden it just felt like this. And then I looked up and there was no roof. So it was hectic.
So I just feel this, this strong wind. That wind was very strong. That wind was very strong, my brother, I'm telling you. I never saw something like that in my life. It's very, very strong. And they just take the roof and everything.
Now, in other news from around the world, medical staff in Gaza say they are working under intense psychological strain. This comes sometimes with being trapped in hospitals during Israeli raids and having to decide whether to leave patients behind or save their own lives, leading to feelings of distress and guilt. According to mental health experts, there is a catastrophic mental health crisis that has unfolded in Gaza, affecting both civilians and humanitarian workers amid the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. The physical toll of the war has been documented in photographs and videos, with Gazans suffering from severe injuries, including the loss of limbs and malnutrition due to the shortage of food and clean water, as well as a full-blown famine that has struck northern Gaza. Meanwhile, there is not much data documenting the mental health crisis among Gazans during the war, but studies of past conflicts have shown the effects of living in war-torn areas. To discuss the mental health challenges and health personnel in Gaza they're facing, we're joined by Dr. Mohammed Abu Mugaiseb from Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza. Hello, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so please go ahead and tell us, how has the ongoing conflict affected health workers, and their mental health and well-being?
I mean, the health workers are part of the population. I mean, the population is, since the last 9 months, there are ongoing continuous bombing, airstrikes, and these airstrikes are targeting not only the people in the streets or homes, as well the patients in the hospitals or medical facilities. And the doctors and nurses or the medical staff are part of this population. So all of the medical staff are suffering, as well as the population, not from only the mental health issues, but as well the lack of basic needs, humanitarian needs. I mean, there is, as you said in your report, lack of drinkable water, clean water, lack of food. There is reports in the north area of starvation. I mean, all of this is a burden on the health staff as well, who are part of the population.
Okay. Now, Doctor, could you paint a picture, for us? What is a typical day like for you working in a healthcare setting? Can you describe the most challenging aspects of your job and how you're prioritizing patients' care amidst the conflict?
First of all, I mean, the security. I mean, security is one of the main challenges. I mean, there is no safe place in Gaza anymore. I mean, you could be in the wrong place, wrong time, and you could be targeted as a collateral damage from an airstrike beside you. Targeting the hospitals of all Gaza has been since the beginning of the war. So you could be in the hospital and there will be a target on the hospital. In addition, I mean, you leave your family at home, you're a doctor or a nurse, and then you are worried, I mean, about them. You are working with patient in the hospital, but your family are outside in their home, and you don't know what will happen to them. You leave them. So the situation is really difficult. In addition of all these basic things that you need, you need to seek water for your family, food, which is not available due to the restriction and the closure of the borders.
That's quite disturbing, Doctor. But what about some of the challenges that we know that you're facing, are shortages of medical supplies, equipment, or even staff. Now, how is all of this affecting your work and patient care?
I mean, the medical supplies, I mean, before even the war, there was shortage of medical supplies. I mean, with the war and with the closure and restriction on aids, medical aids entering, this put big burden on the hospitals, which are limited hospitals as well. The capacity as well of the hospitals, I mean, we have only now remaining 2 hospitals working in the south area of Gaza. All the hospitals have been partially not functional or destroyed. So these hospitals are treating more than 1 million people. You have lack of staff, you have lack of specialized staff. There have been 400 medical staff that have been killed, and more than 300 medical staff that had been arrested by the Israeli army. So, I mean, it's a very challenging for the medical staff, challenging for the doctors and medical staff to provide the proper medical care, quality of care, which is really one of the main issues now.
All right, Doctor, thank you for speaking to us. We understand the circumstances that you're speaking to us under, and we do hope that international organizations and the government, do a lot to actually support healthcare workers in Gaza. Thank you very much. And the world of sports, England will face Spain in the Euro 2024 final in Berlin on Sunday after a last-minute strike from a substitute Ollie Watkins sealed victory over the Netherlands. England were facing another extra 30 minutes until a superb late strike on the turn from Watkins on for Kane sent England into their second successive European Championship final on a dramatic night in Dortmund. England fans who had gathered to watch the Euro 2024 semi-final at a London venue celebrated making it through to the final. In preparation... All right, I think with that, we will be wrapping up the news at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of our top stories. We told you that Supreme Court has declared it's unconstitutional for governors to hold LG funds. We also told you that President Tinubu is seeking way out of new minimum wage issue as he invites labor leaders for talks. Finally, you heard that Mali junta has lifted ban on political activities suspended in April. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, StarTimes channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Dashen. Usman.